Welcome to the Art of Happiness. My name is Tam, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Erin Shimone. I feel like I always sing song your. I don't know how to say your name
without saying my last name.
Without singing your last name. It's just my lot in life. And okay, so on today's episode, we're going to talk about going back to hobbies you had as a kid.
Yeah.
Because of various reasons that we're going to get into.
Yeah. Or should you go back to hobbies as a kid?
Yes. So, and I actually can kind of speak to this because we actually just recently did an episode in which I did go back to a hobby as a kid.
Yeah, we can talk
so
about
I can bring in some personal insight on this. But anyway.
But yeah, my first instinct would be yes, you should consider going back to like revisiting some hobbies you did as a kid to rediscover some things about yourself.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, so I found this article that was from CNN. That was they interviewed Dr. Romani Dervasola. I think I said that name right. And they talked about like the key benefits from going back to a hobby that you previously had. Okay. And so one of them was like you gain like a sense of efficacy. So like the enjoyment that you come from like practicing a skill like that you had back then, or just like a sense of accomplishment, like almost kind of like if you put a pin in a task that maybe you started years ago and then it kind of got to, you forgot about it for a little bit and then it came back. Another is it kind of talked about how another benefit could be like when you go back to like a childlike state or like thought process, it creates kind of a new way for you to be innovative again and imaginative again, which you can actually use that to kind of translate into your career that you're in, right? Yeah. Like maybe you can use that skill set there. Another one is it kind of gives you, it reignites a sense of joy because you're going back to a time of back when the world seemed like conquerable. Like it seemed like you could do anything. It was so big. You could do anything that you wanted to do, right? And like when you go back to that mindset, it kind of gives you that comforting feeling of everything's gonna be okay and like we're gonna be fine and like the world turns kind of thing, you know? And there's a lot of benefits to that.
Yes.
Even just in this current world that we live in. So I thought that was really interesting and I wanted to bring that today to like the topic of like talking about it. So
before you I hadn't read that article, it's the first time I'm hearing this, but like when we just posed this topic, the first thing I thought of is just like this idea that when you're a kid, which I think is kind of what he's implying, you don't have any filters on the world, you don't have any outside influences, you're just kind of, at least when you're real little, like you're just following what brings you joy, which was what we were all about, right? And getting back to that. So to me, going back to thinking about what brought you joy before you were influenced by all these other things in life, it might really help you get back to finding happiness, so that's where my brain goes with
that's really interesting. Yeah, you're right, because I didn't even think about the fact of how we are so impressionable and we're molded by like our parents, our peers, our teachers, to kind of be this functioning person in society, right? But sometimes that molding is against the grain of who you truly are or what your interests are, or maybe you had something you're interested in, your peers kind of thought it was kind of silly and so they kind of you
stopped doing it
because you wanted to fit in. Definitely. Right? And then you're kind of almost pretending to be a version of yourself that you aren't really.
And I think a lot of us can relate to that, or most people, I think, to some extent. Some people have more confidence than others, but I think
Not one of those.
is most people, like, you change who you are for the other people. You want to stay part of the tribe, right?
Right, absolutely.
So,
and so I think when it's exploring like hobbies, I think we've talked about it early on in the show, just like how millennial women, like specifically us, when we're trying to look for hobbies, like if you try to Google it, it gives you the same three things, right? Crochet and sewing, and if those don't really like attract your attention, you're like, well, I guess I'm done. I'm out. I'm not going to be able to have a hobby. Maybe what you do is you kind of go back a couple steps. So like we talked about in our hidden hobbies episode, how like we just sat down and journaled like our interests, right? And then within that, see if there's a hobby there. Well, I'll be the first to admit that when I did that, I only went back like the last 20 years.
True. No, I agree. Yeah, you don't dive into the childhood.
I didn't think to go back as far as the childhood, right? Like I didn't think to go back there.
You recently had a very successful discovery, and it's in another episode, but you can briefly tell us your recent discovery that has been very fun for you.
Yeah, so and at 2:00 in the morning, you know, like stress, anxiety, staying up, like stress spiral, I thought about Polly Pockets.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I really liked one of those. There was one that was a cottage that had grandma in it. It was my favorite. And I spoke to my sister and just kind of was like, what do you think about me buying a Polly Pocket? And she was like, do it! And buying that Polly Pocket totally like gave me like this huge endorphin boost that I just felt like hit me in like such a nostalgic way that took me back to like a time of where I just felt like I can literally, Erin, see myself sitting on the floor playing with this doll next to my little bed. And like suddenly I'm there. I'm not even here anymore. Like
That's so cool.
I'm in my bedroom as a kid, and it's like, man, like I didn't care about anything in that moment except for where's grandma's tray. I can't find grandma's tray to the oven. And like those were my biggest stressors as a kid, you know? And being able to kind of remove myself from, you know, adults mindset and like getting back into like the kid mindset, when I kind of came out of that like nostalgic flashback, I just felt good. I was like, man, I don't need to be so stressed about that dish that broke this morning in the dishwasher. I don't need to feel bad about it. It was an accident. Accidents happen, you know? Whereas prior to like going back into that nostalgic thought, I was like, dang it. I just like really liked that one class.
Can I go back to being a kid and not having to worry about anything?
Right?
That'd be great.
I was
That'd be
like,
great.
dang it, now I gotta clean that up. And I was so frustrated with myself for breaking it because it was like, it's so dangerous.
So it sounds like it really helped like just reduce your stress in that moment.
It
like
did.
so stress reliever, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And just bring more happiness in your life, right? And just make it more fun and lighthearted. And so I think that's a like perfect example for what we're talking about. And I think, you know, we talk a lot about finding our true self, authentic self on the show and like discovering what brings you joy. And I think looking back, not necessarily even just at toys you played with or things like that, but even thinking about how you spent your days. Were you drawn to being creative, like doing art? Did you like to read? Did you love to be active and do sports? You know, or did you do a lot of sports, but then those were things you didn't actually like, but your parents made you do them?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
I think kind of reflecting on those things can be really powerful, you know. One thing that comes to mind as we've been sitting here thinking about this is like, I was really into, and I know I've kind of touched on this, I was really into like performance arts, like doing acting, singing, and things like that, and I was never very good at it, but I always really liked it, you know. And I don't know what happened, you know. I don't know why. I think my latest memory would be that probably middle school.
Okay.
When the stakes are a little higher, you know, with your peers.
Sure.
I think if that's probably what squashed it, was being scared of being made fun of or like not good enough. And so I feel like that's when I kind of gave it up, was when I entered that 7th grade, you know,
where you really start to get that self.
And like, so.
Were you in a class, like an acting performance class, or were you like just doing like a play at school?
I did a lot of the plays at school when I was in elementary, and then I remember like my mom tried to support me and took me like into the community and did some plays for like church and things like that. Or and then, you know, I can't remember if I never did voice lessons or anything like that, but I remember like being in middle school trying out for things, and I was too fearful and I couldn't get past that at that point, you know, like that crept in, and then I wasn't able, and I kind of just gave it up after that. That's so crazy, because like I think you're one of like the bravest people I know. I feel like you're very good about putting yourself out there. So like to hear that there was like that hesitation is kind of shocking for me, because I just feel like, and you're very determined too. So like when you want something, like you like Erin's gonna get what she wants. Thank you. I mean, that was
like, especially if the only hurdle that's in your way is you, like you're gonna do it. So it's really interesting to me.
Well, I guess maybe it's the people pleaser. Coming back to that, it would just overrid the determination, you know, and that was very strong at that point in your life. That's just a hard time anyway, and you know.
Do you think you would ever try it again? Like, do you think you would ever try to explore that?
I've thought about it.
I mean, the podcast is kind of like the first
step
into it.
I agree. Like, putting ourselves out there this way has been good. And then, you know, I thought about doing it, like, going into, like, I don't even know where to go as an adult.
What if I became, like, your agent?
Be like,
well, if you be an agent, and let me look into some classes for you.
Well,
oh my God, my new hobby. You can be my new hobby,
But yeah, but see, like, then I'm like, oh, I'm starting to feel this fear again.
Oh my gosh. I bet it would be fearful because,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot that comes with putting yourself out there, especially like, you know, when you, so, you know, we're talking about like finding who we are and like really going forward with that. Like, if you're still trying to find who you are, it can be kind of, especially in like the performing like stage arena, I bet it would be really challenging to go up there because you'd be like, am I being authentic like me? Or am I, you know, do I need to put on this performance? But is this a performance or is this me kind of thing?
Yeah. And I think that those fears as a child are like deeply rooted. So like getting over that, you know, I don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah. And you said your mom was really supportive though, like, right? Yeah. She took you to those and you just felt like it was just like the peer pressure.
When I was little, yeah.
It's unfortunate.
So I wonder if I could go back to that mental space pre-teen.
Yes. I want you to so bad, Erin. I would love to support you. I want to be in the audience. You're like, that's my friend. I think I've told you, like, my dream is to be like the best friend to like the celebrity. like you see.
Whoa, slow down.
Come on, Erin, you're a celebrity, so I can be the best friend. I'll make sure that you have all the bonbons in your room.
Oh, Tam, you're the best. You're the best.
I'll find gold flowers because I know gold's your favorite.
Thank
I'll
you.
make sure.
Thank you. Back on topic.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, but anyways, that was just something that I thought of. Just like so I think it could be positive or negative, you know, going back to something that brought you joy as a child, potentially. Yeah. But if you could get through that, if I could get through that, I can imagine that'd be really powerful for myself.
Yeah, so, well, you bring up a good point how, like, kind of going back, like, while we like to say, like, all of the things we're telling you is going to bring out all these awesome positive things, there's also kind of, like, maybe it could bring, like, a bit of a negative spin in two ways, you know? Like, one of them I'm thinking, like, you know, how, like, you talked about with you, like, it was kind of bringing back some, like, angst that you kind of felt and kind of some peer pressure that kind of just made you feel some type of way. It's a very pivotal moment for you, right? Right. So, you know, maybe me pressuring you to do that maybe isn't ideal, and I guess I can apologize for that. But, you know, I could see how that could make somebody be like, well, that didn't work, right? Yeah. Or, like, if you're into sports, right? Maybe like you were really great at it as a kid, but like now, like your body just kind of doesn't allow you to kind of go back to that. I could see how that can kind of be disheartening. Yeah. So I would say, like, maybe like going back to the childhood hobbies, like listen to yourself and listen to your body, you know, like maybe it's not necessarily that it's a negative. Maybe it's you've evolved. Yeah. You've evolved as a person. Definitely. Maybe the reason why that hobby isn't there that you had when you were a kid is because you've evolved into a different person, or maybe you've evolved into the person that you know you are, and that doesn't suit you anymore. Right. Or like I said, maybe like your body is just like, you know, you can't really, you know, do that sport anymore, but maybe you can try this other sport that still kind of taps into that same arena that brought you joy in that first sport, but keeps your body in a safe, healthy spot. Yeah. But, you know, going back to like the positive side of it, one thing that we had an episode where we talked about production versus consumption hobbies. And one thing I didn't think about until we kind of started exploring this is, you know, when you're a kid, I don't know that you really have either of those as hobbies. I think it really is just purely just for joy. Like you're literally just motivated for, I like that, so I'm gonna move on to the next thing. I like that.
That's a good point.
Like I look at my kids and it's like, unless they're having a good time, they're not doing it. Yeah. Like, and
they don't care if they're like making a masterpiece, masterpiece.
They never finish the coloring page. Yeah. They never finish the coloring page. And I struggle so I can't even tell you how many coloring books I have that have just like just the hair of this princess is colored, or just the weapon on this Ninja Turtle is colored, but I can't throw the book away, Erin. Right. Like you need to finish the pages. There's still stuff to color. So and it drives me crazy. But like my kids, like they're like, oh no, I did all that I wanted to do on that page. Like I'm not going back to it. It's like we're not going back to it.
That's such a good point. I didn't really consider that, but they really just fly by the seat of their pants, and they're like,
they that coloring sheet brought them joy that one moment. Yep. That's all I needed from it. Yeah. They don't care what happens to it from now. Well, I can't say they don't care because I swear to God, if I throw away that coloring book,
they'll want it.
The next day they'll be like, "Where's that one coloring book?" Like, no.
Like, I don't know what happened to it. Go look in your drawers.
Trying to hide it in the trash can so that they don't know. But I feel like, you know, we're when you become an adult, like everything has to be. It feels like everything should be productive, right? It feels like everything needs to have a purpose and like you need to do something. in order to show people that you did it. Otherwise, you can feel like people be like, well, then did you just waste your time, right?
Yeah.
Like you almost feel like you have to present something to show that you did something with your time. Whereas like if you kind of go back to that mindset of like nostalgia as a kid, like it was purely just for fun. It wasn't to show anybody something.
Right.
It wasn't to sell it on eBay or Etsy, unless you find your Polly Pockets and you want to sell them to me. I'll take them.
I'll ask my mom.
I'm plugging that in there because it's my new obsession.
I know she sells my Barbies. I don't know about
Oh my god, if you find some Polly's, I would love to play with you.
Okay.
But I just think that's something worth exploring.
Absolutely. And it makes me think too on the like parenting front, how you are now sharing your Polly Pockets with your kids, and that can be really powerful.
Yes.
And like I could see how if you could bring in some of the things that truly brought you joy, then that would just add to the happiness.
Oh my god, I
just
can
to share that with your kids.
Confirm that. And my personal experience with the Pollys, when Polly arrived in the box, like my kids also squealed with me when I opened it, and seeing my daughters play with the Pollys and get enjoyment out of it, like that's a like the Polly specifically that I really enjoy is like from 1991. Yeah. And like to see a toy from 1991,
it's pretty cool.
Entertaining a generation that has complete access to iPads, games, like some like really stellar looking games, right? And to see them play with that for as long as they did, having so much joy, it was kind of like, for me, it was the closest I think I'll ever get to what our husbands kind of have, where they're kind of like passing generational hobbies down. Right. That was, I feel like that's the closest I'm going to get to be. I could say right now anyway, to passing down a hobby. Because like Polly still exists. Yep. She's just in a different form. Right. She just, evolved with the kids these days. But like to see like my version of Polly and them giggling about it and playing with it, it was like, yes, that feels good.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think I need to think about what I can share with my boys.
I would be very interested to see that.
My mom still has a Barbie house and Barbies, and she brings them out and they play with them.
I bet they do.
Not like, not a ton. They're not like super into it, but I've seen them do it. That's kind of cool.
I think that's awesome. Because I mean, like, I don't think anybody put, like, I think people put that gender bias on Barbies,
definitely,
right?
100%.
And it sounds like you guys aren't, which is phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
Because Barbie's awesome, and her dream house is even more awesome. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm like, I'm gonna have a dream house someday.
Yes, I mean they were pretty awesome. That's so. And the other thing I was thinking, just when we were talking, is how going back to that headspace could almost reinvigorate some new creativity in your life, and maybe inspire you. You kind of already touched on this, but inspire you to think of other hobbies like that aren't just the stereotypical hobbies.
Oh yeah.
So I just I don't know.
Yeah, I mean
there's so many benefits I could see to revisiting some things as a child.
Yeah, I never imagined that I would be collecting toys and playing with toys in my mid-age. Yeah. Young age.
Mid-age.
But like talking about how, going back to a positive time and how that can, kind of get you out of the headspace of now. Like I said, I transformed my desk. Yeah. To remove like stuff that just was clutter to make room to put Pollys on my desk. And I can tell you, like checking in the morning to get my day started and seeing like the pastel colors and like the little tiny toys.
Your day. Just a little something.
It just makes going to work a little bit more positive, right? And I just feel like I have like a little bit more positive outlook on it. And it's kind of like reinvigorated this like joyful creative side for me.
Maybe I think you do. I was just thinking you like to decorate kind of to your, you're pretty good about putting things up on the wall that you like and things like that. Maybe that's something you should get getting more into, like decorating your space or like making your space very
like your space,
like
your
I could see you really liking it, like something that was like your little happy place. Ooh, I mean, you kind of did that with this little corner here.
Oh, the studio is our happy space.
Yeah.
But no, that's a good point. I've always said I have no interior decorating ability whatsoever.
Me either.
But that's not to say that I couldn't just pare that down and just say I could get into making spaces, like a small space for people.
Not for people, for you.
Fun. Yeah, for me too. But I would love to support. Like, I want to come to your house now, and I'm gonna be like, all right, Erin, let's pick a corner.
That'd be interesting.
Erin, I want to do
That'd be kind of fun.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, because sometimes you need an outsider's perspective to help with stuff like that. Sometimes I get so in analysis paralysis is what I call it.
Yes.
Where I'm like, I can't pick.
Yes.
So,
and that's interesting. That's actually a really good point, because I think that's kind of what holds me back from like considering interior decoration. Like I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea. It's a whole house, right? But when it came to like completely revamping my desk, I just went for it. I like there was nothing. I don't even remember like even thinking like, okay, I need to, I don't remember sitting down and like, okay, I need to like really plan this out. Like I didn't do that. I literally just like took my hand and swung it across.
Would have liked to have seen that.
And I was like, all right, first let's start with the polys. Like, where do I want them to be? I want them to be within arm's reach so I can play with them. I think there's a lot of, from personal experience, I would say there is a lot of benefits.
And there's research to prove it, right?
Research to show that there's a lot of benefits from just trying to go back in time and just look for a time that brought you joy. And if it's as simple as buying a toy, do it. And see if maybe even going back that far, you could find something that you can bring into this this next chapter of your life. Maybe that was who you really were, but then just like the world shaped you out of it. So maybe you might see Erin on the stage someday. And me in the crowd going, that's my friend. But you never know, it might bring you joy. So I personally highly recommend considering like going back 20, 30 years and seeing if there is a hobby that could bring you joy, or maybe it was something of interest that wasn't a hobby then that you could spin into a hobby.
I think it could be, it doesn't necessarily need to be
doesn't have to be a copy and print
or something. No. Just something you were drawn to as a kid. You know, I want to acknowledge that not everybody had quintessential. I feel like we're talking about it like we had these perfect childhoods. And
oh my God.
You know, and we didn't, you know, and we're just talking about pieces of our childhood that were like positive in our brains, right?
Absolutely.
And acknowledging that we're not thinking about finding that our childhoods were perfect or that they were like our happy time necessarily.
Right.
I guess I just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, no.
And that it's more about just finding those pieces that you remember that were like you really got into. You know, you remember as a kid sitting down and like you just didn't.
It was you.
You just dived in and you didn't think about anything else.
There was nothing. There were no outside sources convincing you to do anything differently. It was just you being you, following your gut. And I think if you start there, I can't imagine that you could go wrong. Like I feel like
I think it's a really great place to start thinking about if you aren't sure where to start with your journey to like find, you know, your authentic self and hobbies that bring you joy.
Absolutely. And I think that if you just listen to yourself, you know, if you find that it's not really bringing that joy, stop. It's not worth it.
Right.
You know, just it's another starting point. You know, we all have to start with somewhere, and we're just trying to provide different many avenues for you to try to start, because everyone's got that authentic self, and they're gonna find it. You're gonna get there.
Love it. Yes. So find your inner child.
Find it. And that wraps up today's podcast
episode. We hope you enjoyed this topic, gave you some ideas. You know, hit us up on social media. We'd love to connect with you. And tune in for more next time.
Yes. Bye.